You know, I'm not superstitious. I'm 60 years old. I've buried both my parents, sat through more funerals than weddings at this point, and watched enough bad things happen to good people to know the universe does not run on Hallmark logic. But that night, the dream felt different. In the dream, I was sitting at my old kitchen table from the house I grew up in, the ugly yellow linoleum, the avocado green fridge humming in the corner, the old clock with a rooster on it ticking way too loud. And my mother was there. Not the worn-out, fragile woman from her final hospital days. No, this was my mother at 50. Sharp eyes, lipstick on, hair sprayed within an inch of its life, that look that could stop you mid-sin. She reached across the table, put her hand over mine, and said very clearly, "Don't go to the restaurant he invited you to." I remember laughing in the dream. "What restaurant?" "You'll know," she said. "Don't go." I woke up with my heart pounding. It was one of those wake-ups where you're so sure someone actually spoke that you check the room, but it was just me in the king-size bed, me and the faint outline of where my husband used to sleep curled close before he slowly migrated to his side like I was a roommate. I told myself it was just grief doing a pop-up show in my subconscious. Mom had only been gone 3 years. Sometimes I still went to call her before I remembered. I got up, brushed my teeth, made coffee. By the time my husband, Mark, came into the kitchen, the dream was already shrinking in my head, like something left too long in the dryer. He walked in wearing his usual work uniform, pressed blue shirt, expensive watch, that subtle but smug cologne he liked. 62 and still handsome in that clean corporate way. Salt and pepper hair, flat stomach, the works. He kissed my cheek out of habit more than affection. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I answered. He poured his coffee, sat down, and scrolled his phone like a teenager. I scrambled eggs. We talked about nothing. Traffic, gas prices, the neighbor's stupid dog. Then, right as he pushed his chair back, he cleared his throat. "Oh, I made us a reservation tonight," he said casually, "at La Belle Vegan." Something cold went through me. La Belle Vegan, new French place downtown. Everyone was talking about it. Tiny portions and huge prices, that kind of place. The kind of spot you only go to for anniversaries or milestones, or to impress someone you're trying to sleep with. I felt my fingers tighten around the spatula. In my dream, my mother's voice echoed, "Don't go to the restaurant he invited you to." I laughed a little, too high. "What's the occasion?" He looked at his watch instead of at me. "Just thought it'd be nice. 7 o'clock. I'll meet you there straight from the office, okay? Don't dress too casual." Don't dress too casual. That was when another feeling stirred in my gut, one I had ignored for longer than I care to admit. For context, we live in a suburb outside Cleveland. Quiet street, older trees, neighbors who pretend not to watch each other, but absolutely do. We've been in that damned 2-story colonial for 27 years, raised our only kid there, paid it off there, refinanced it more times than I liked when Mark wanted something expensive and we'll catch up later. We'd been married 32 years. I knew his tones. The "I'm hiding a surprise" tone, the "I bought something stupid and need to soften you up" tone, and the "I'm nervous and trying not to show it" tone. This was that last one. I stood there, eggs on the spatula, and for one wild second I almost said, "No, I'm not going." But I looked at his face, that familiar profile I'd stared at across 1,000 breakfasts and dinners and PTA meetings, and I thought, "Don't be ridiculous. It's just a dream. You're not 16 with an Ouija board." "Sure," I said. "I'll be there." He was already halfway out the door. "Great, see you tonight." The door shut. The house went quiet again. I stared at the eggs in the pan until they started to burn. The restaurant where my marriage died. La Belve again looked exactly how you'd expect. Low lighting, candles on the tables, waiters in black. The kind of place where they say the menu out loud like you're illiterate and then charge you $60 for something that looks like a garnish. I wore a simple black dress that had seen more funerals than dates in recent years. My good pearls, the shoes that didn't kill my back. I curled my hair, put on lipstick, and told myself to stop being dramatic. It's just dinner.
Yet when I walked in and told the hostess my name, that cold feeling came back. "Right this way, Mrs. Reynolds," she said, too politely. "Your husband is already here." Of course he was. Mark is always already here. The early bird, the prepared executive, the man with a plan. Except when it came to things that actually mattered. I spotted him at a corner table by the window, a bottle of wine already open. His tie loosened, jacket on the chair, phone face down. He stood when he saw me, smiled. But it wasn't the smile I'd fallen in love with at 28. That had been goofy and a little self-conscious. This one was practiced. "You look great," he said. Quick kiss on the cheek. "You too," I lied, sitting down. The waitress came over, did the whole routine. He ordered for us, which annoyed me more than it should have. He knew I hated when he did that, but Mark's been moving through the world assuming he knows best for so long, I don't think he even hears it anymore. We did small talk at first. His work, my part-time job at the local library, which he has always considered cute and a nice hobby instead of real work despite me putting in 20 years there. Our daughter, Emily, who lives in Chicago now, working as a physical therapist and constantly apologizing for not visiting enough, even though I tell her she's fine. Then the food came. Tiny little art projects on plates. I picked at my meal, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Finally, after the plates were cleared and the second glass of wine was poured, he sighed. "Okay," he said, like he was about to tell me they were raising our cable bill. "There's something I need to talk to you about." Every muscle in my body tightened. "All right," I said, evenly. "Talk." He stared at his wine glass, turning it by the stem. He always did that when he knew I wasn't going to like something. "I've been thinking a lot," he started. About us. About my life. About the next chapter." Next chapter? I could have smacked him with the dessert menu. "You want to really make a woman suspicious? Start speaking in metaphors." I stayed quiet. "And I've reached the conclusion that I want a divorce." There it was. 6 words, neat and tidy as a bullet in a boardroom scenario. It's strange, the things you notice when your life tilts. Behind him, a couple laughed too loud. Someone clinked a glass. A waiter dropped a fork and apologized. My brain zoomed in on the weirdest details while everything inside me screamed. I heard my own voice say, too calm, "You want a divorce." He nodded, eyes still not quite meeting mine. "Yes." "After 32 years?" "Yes." He took a deep breath. "I didn't want to blindside you, but..." "Oh, you absolutely did," I cut in. "We are smack in the middle of Blindside Town, in case you hadn't noticed." He frowned like I was being unreasonable. "Come on, Linda. Let's be adults about this." That right there, that little condescending tilt of his voice, did more to wake me up than the words, "I want a divorce." "Why?" I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. "I'm not happy," he said finally. "I haven't been. For a long time. And you just realized this tonight? Over a $40 piece of salmon?" He flinched a little, then put on his reasonable face again. "This isn't sudden for me. I've been thinking about it for years. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't keep living like this." "Like what?" I demanded. "In a house that's paid off, with a wife who has stood by you through layoffs and promotions and that ulcer scare, who took care of your mother when she broke her hip, who raised your kid practically alone because you were
always at the office? He winced. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Good, I snapped, because it should be hard. That's what marriage is. You don't just wake up and declare a new chapter, Mark. This isn't a TED Talk. He sighed. We don't communicate anymore. We want different things. We grew apart. It was like he'd swallowed a script from some midlife crisis self-help book. And that's when, under all the shock and anger and hurt, another feeling crept in. Suspicion. Because I may be hurt, but I'm not stupid. I asked, who is she? His eyes finally met mine. Just for a second, I sought it. Panic. He said, there's no one else. This is about us. Who is she? Don't start. Don't you Linda me like I'm some hysterical woman in a movie.
You do not ask for a divorce out of nowhere at a restaurant you know we can't afford after 32 years of marriage because you woke up and felt philosophical. He set his jaw. I'm not discussing this if you're going to be irrational. I leaned back, laughed once. You know what? Don't bother. I already know there's someone. I just don't know who she is yet. But I will. Please, he said, suddenly sounding tired. Let's not turn this into a scene. A scene, I repeated. Oh, I'd hate to embarrass you in front of your favorite sommelier. That got his attention. He glanced around, lowered his voice. The point is, he said, I've spoken to a lawyer. We can do this amicably. I'll be fair. We'll sell the house, split the assets, figure out a reasonable support number. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like he was talking about rehoming a cat. My hands were shaking under the table. I forced them to stillness. Wow, I said. You've really thought this through. I have, he admitted. I didn't want to drag it out any longer. I looked at him. The man I'd slept next to for 3 decades, who'd seen me give birth, seen me at my worst, who'd held me when my mother died. The man I'd supported while he climbed his way up the corporate ladder, enduring the late nights, the stress, the constant talk about the firm. And I realized, with a sort of icy clarity, that I'd been taken off his list a long time ago. This dinner wasn't about a mutual decision. This was a notification. My mother's words flashed in my head again. Don't go. I should have listened to her. What? I asked. Nothing, I said. Then I smiled. It surprised even me how calmly it came out. All right, Mark. You want a divorce? You've consulted a lawyer? Congratulations. We'll do this the right way. I'll get my own lawyer. He looked relieved. Good. That's good. We can... But let me be very clear, I cut in. You do not get to decide unilaterally how my life will go from here. That train stops tonight. You understand? He gave me a patronizing little nod, like I'd just agreed to a carpool schedule. Of course. I want to be fair. I looked at that open bottle of wine between us. It was a red he'd picked, something from his beloved collection. He had a temperature-controlled wine room in our basement, built during one of his big bonus years. Invested in it like a second child. At the time, I'd rolled my eyes, but gone along with it. It made him happy, I'd told myself. And after all, hadn't I benefited from those bonuses too? Sitting there, staring at that bottle, I had no idea it would become the centerpiece of my revenge. If I'm being honest, I didn't feel vengeful yet. I felt hollow. I let him pay the check, I let him walk me to my car, and let him kiss my cheek again and say, "We'll talk more later this week. Try to get some rest," as if he hadn't just dropped a bomb into my life. I drove home on autopilot, walked into my quiet house, and stood in the middle of the kitchen, where that same morning I'd made him eggs like I'd done thousands of times. Then I put both hands on the counter,
bowed my head, and whispered, "Okay, Mom, I went. You were right. I should have listened to you." And something in me, something old, something tired of being the reasonable one, woke up. The mistress and the new arrangement, I found out who she was 2 weeks later. Her name was Ashley. Of course it was. 34, cute as a button, long balayaged hair, perfectly manicured nails, and a wardrobe that tried very hard to say professional while still screaming, "Look at me!" She worked in his department. I saw that on Facebook. Yes, I snooped. Of course I did. If there's one thing women my age know how to do, is stalk half the internet with nothing but a name and 2 fragments of information. I saw the photos from company events. Mark smiling with his arm just a little too close to her back. Group shots where they happened to be standing next to each other a bit too often. Candid photos where she was laughing up at him like he just invented fire. Classic. I showed my friend Donna, who's known me since college and is blunt to a fault. "Oh, yeah," she said, pointing at the screen while we sat in my kitchen. "I'm absolutely sleeping with her." "I kinda thought so," I said, voice dry. Donna squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "No. I will be." Mark had moved into a furnished apartment temporarily while we sorted things out. He made it sound like we were rearranging furniture, not dismantling a life.
He still came by the house a couple times a week to get mail, pick up clothes, make sure I hadn't moved the holy shrine that was the wine room. We were in that weird limbo stage where nothing was final yet. Lawyers had been contacted, but not much had actually happened. He kept talking about being fair while suggesting things that were insultingly lopsided in his favor. "We can get you a smaller place," he said one afternoon, standing in the living room like a realtor gauging square footage. "Something more manageable. You don't need all this space." "You mean the house I decorated, maintained, and turned into a home?" I asked. "The one with my garden, my friends down the block, my neighbors I've known for decades?" He shrugged. "I'm just trying to be practical. I'll need to make sure I have enough liquid assets for retirement and your girlfriend," I added sweetly. He flushed. "She has nothing to do with this." "Sure," I said, "just like I have nothing to do with your career success." That made him pause. Just for a second. A flash of guilt, quickly smoothed over. He moved on. A week after I confirmed Ashley was indeed real, he texted me, "We should all sit down and talk. You, me, and Ashley. I think it would help." I stared at the message for a long time. You, me, and Ashley. As if she were a coworker we needed to loop in on a project. I showed the text to Donna. She almost choked on her coffee. "He wants what?" "He thinks it would help if I met her," I said. "Wants to explain how things will work going forward." "What is this, a corporate reorg?" Donna demanded. "Is he sending you a PowerPoint with that?" "Wouldn't surprise me," I muttered. I should have said no. But there was a sharp, cold curiosity in me now. I wanted to see her. I wanted to see how he looked at her when I was sitting right there. I wanted to hear this plan he thought was so reasonable. So I texted back. "Sure. Name the time and place." He suggested, of course, a restaurant. Not La Belle Vignane this time. Somewhere slightly less formal, but still nice. Plenty of witnesses in case hysterical wife one went rogue, I suppose. The night of the meeting, I stood in front of my closet longer than I care to admit. I chose something simple again. Dark jeans, a navy blouse, the good boots. I wore the earrings Mom left me. Not because I thought they'd bring me luck, but because I felt like her presence might keep me from reaching across the table and flicking his perfect nose. When I arrived, they were already there. He saw me first and stood up. Ashley turned around,
and I saw her face full on for the first time. Pretty. Not stunning, but young. That was the real draw. Fresh skin, bright smile, a body that hadn't had a baby and a lifetime sit heavy on it yet. She looked nervous. Good. Linda, Mark said, like we were meeting for a quarterly review. Thanks for coming. I slid into the chair opposite them. Wouldn't miss it. This is Ashley, he said, as if I didn't already know her Instagram better than her own mother did. Ashley, this is my wife, Linda. I noticed he still said, my wife. Ashley's smile flickered. Hi, Linda. It's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. I bet you have, I replied. Her smile twitched and then stabilized into something polite. Mark always says you're very strong. Oh, does he? I said. That's one word for it. A waiter came over and we went through the motions of ordering. It was surreal. Like we were on some trashy daytime talk show, except the cameras were invisible and the stakes were real. Once the waiter left, Mark clasped his hands together on the table, all business. So, I know this is unconventional. You don't say, I murmured. But I think it's important we're all on the same page. We're all adults here. No one wants drama. I raised both eyebrows. You're leaving your wife of 32 years for a coworker half her age, and I'm the one who might bring drama? He sighed. Can you not be like this? Like what? I asked. Accurate? Ashley cleared her throat in that way people do when they're trying to soften tension they helped create. I just want to say that I respect you, Linda. Truly. I know this must be hard. Oh, sweetheart, I said, mustering every ounce of my 60 years of patience. You have absolutely no idea. She fidgeted with her napkin. Mark jumped back in. The point is, this is happening. The divorce. Ashley and I are together. We're serious. I didn't want it to feel like something sneaky. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. We're a little past sneaky, Mark. He pressed on.
I've talked to my lawyer about some options. We sell the house and split the proceeds. I keep the wine collection. Of course, I said. Wouldn't want the new girlfriend to suffer through Trader Joe's. He ignored that. We'll set up a financial arrangement for you, and Emily knows she won't be impacted. Emily knows? I repeated sharply. You talked to our daughter before you sat me down with your mistress? He winced. I wanted to reassure her. Reassure her of what? I demanded. That Daddy's midlife crisis won't cut into her grad school loans? Ashley spoke up timidly. We just thought, I cut in? Oh, good. We're at the we stage. Linda, Mark said, voice warning. Don't Linda me, I said again, my voice low. You invited me here to what? Calmly explain how you're rearranging my life like furniture? Tell me what I get and what I don't? Introduce your affair partner so we can all co-parent your reputation? His mouth tightened. You're being cruel. Oh, I'm just getting warmed up. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. This doesn't have to be ugly. Then it should have started different, I replied. Ashley tried again. We really do want you to be okay, she said earnestly. That's why we wanted to talk with you. Mark worries about you, you know? Does he? I said. Yes, she said. He feels guilty. Mark shot her a look. She clamped her mouth shut. I didn't say that, he muttered. I sat back, watched them for a moment. Corporate guy and his new recruit. I knew that dynamic all too well. I'd listened to him for years, bragging about how he mentored young talent, how loyal his team was, how essential he was to the firm. He'd always liked power. He'd just gotten better at hiding it under words like leadership and vision. You do understand, I said slowly, that I am not going to roll over and let you dictate the terms of my life like this is a performance review.
I'm not dictating, he protested. I'm proposing. From a position of power you built on my unpaid labor. There's a difference. That got his attention. He finally shut up for a second. I know more than you think, Mark, I said quietly, about the sacrifices I made so you could become Mr. Executive, about the nights I went to bed alone while you entertained clients, about the weekends I took your mother to doctor appointments while you caught up on work. He shifted in his seat. That's not fair. No, it's not, but it's true. The waiter returned, dropping plates on the table. It broke the moment. The smell of garlic hit my nose, and suddenly I was starving and nauseous at the same time. Look, Mark said once the waiter left, what's done is done. We can't change that. What we can do is figure out how to move forward in a way that's civilized. And by civilized, you mean convenient for you? I mean civilized for all of us, he insisted. I don't want you struggling financially. I don't want drama with Emily. I want to be able to attend the same events, see our grandkids someday without all this tension. Oh, you're already planning grandkids with your side piece? I asked mildly. Ambitious. Ashley's cheeks went pink. He glared at me. You're lashing out. Of course I am, I said calmly. I'm hurt. I'm angry. I'm also paying attention because I may be 60, Mark, but I am not done. I am not disposable, and I am not some placeholder you can downgrade and then manage out. Manage out? He repeated. Corporate term, right? I said. You like those. Makes being a jerk sound professional. He shook his head. You're twisting this. No, I said. I'm finally seeing it clearly. I put my fork down, looked him straight in the eye. You have spent your entire career building a reputation. At work, with your fancy clients, with your boss, with whoever else. Thoughtful, ethical, loyal, a leader, a mentor, the guy who always goes the extra mile. Because it's true, he said, stubbornly. I smiled. It felt strange on my face, like I was trying on someone else's expression. Sure, I said. Let's go with that. I turned to Ashley. You should know something, Ashley, I said gently. Men like Mark rarely blow up their lives over nothing. He's not risking a 30-plus-year marriage just because he got bored. There's something in it for him. There's leverage. There's upside. There's always some kind of story. Her eyes flicked between us, confused. She started, but I was already standing up. I'm not going to sit here and let you dictate some neat little plan for my future like you're rolling out a new company policy. My lawyer will contact yours. Do not text me invitations to strategy sessions.
I am not on your team anymore. Linda, Mark said sharply, sit down, we're not finished. Oh, honey, I said, channeling my mother so hard I could almost feel her hand on my shoulder. You have no idea how finished we are. And as I walked out of that restaurant, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was done. And somewhere, under all that shock and sorrow, revenge began to take shape like a slow, steady storm. The wine and the lies. Here's what you need to know about my husband. His true love wasn't me, or even Ashley. It was his image. Work was his stage. The firm was his world. He'd been there nearly 30 years, climbing and clawing his way up from some mid-level analyst in his 30s to regional director now. He loved being respected, admired, needed. He also loved his wine. That collection in our basement, that wasn't a hobby. That was a shrine to his ego. Over the years, he'd poured a ridiculous amount of money into it. Rare bottles, special vintages, limited releases. He kept meticulous records, spreadsheets, insurance appraisals, the works. He showed that wine room off like it was another promotion.
Every colleague who came over, every client, every neighbor he wanted to impress got a tour. I'd see his face light up as he went on about tannins and terroir and whatever nonsense. Meanwhile, I learned enough to nod at the right times and top off chip bowls. I'd always thought of the wine collection as his thing, his midlife crisis sub-project, annoying but ultimately harmless. But now, standing in that cool, dim room a few days after the dinner with Ashley, I saw it differently. I saw it as an asset. I saw it as leverage. And eventually, I saw it as a weapon. I ran my fingers along the labels. I remembered the times he'd babbled about this one being worth a few thousand, that one being an investment. He'd even once joked that if the market tanked, we could live off his Bordeaux. Back then, I'd laughed. Now, I mentally turned that laugh into a chokehold. At first, my revenge thoughts were fuzzy, vague. Angry little fantasies about smashing every bottle or hosting a party where every glass got poured down the sink while he watched. But I'm not 25. I've learned a thing or two. Anger is a great engine. It's a terrible driver. So I slowed down. I started by gathering information. 32 years of being married to someone teaches you their habits better than any private investigator. I knew his passwords. Not all of them, but enough. Variations, patterns, birthdays, pet names. Men like Mark think they're clever. They're not. I started with the shared desktop in the home office, then the old laptop he'd stopped using but never wiped, then the file cabinets he assumed I never opened that often because they were work stuff. He'd been sloppy. There were emails he'd printed about deals he was proud of, notes about clients, a few memos that, at the time, probably felt routine. Little indications of corners being cut just this once. And there were, of course, the bragging conversations we'd had over the years. The times he'd come home buzzed from a client dinner, loosening his tie, crowing about some save he'd pulled off. "I practically rescued their entire quarter," he'd say. "The board will eat this up." I remembered those nights, not because I cared about the deals, but because those were the nights he'd talk freely. And I was the one listening. See, Mark had always assumed I didn't understand his work, that I was just nodding along while he talked about moving numbers around and positioning and creative accounting. I might not know the intricacies of financial regulations, but I know right and wrong. And I know the tone someone uses when they've crossed a line and convinced themselves it's fine. So I started making my own notes. Dates, client names, company names, deals that seemed especially flexible. I wasn't trying to build a legal case myself. I just wanted enough to know where to look, enough to know what questions someone else, someone with authority, would want answers to. What really lit a fire under me, though, was the discovery of the gift list. It was a spreadsheet tucked into a folder labeled innocuously enough. At first glance, it looked like any other inventory, but then I saw the notes. Client names next to certain bottles, dates,
Potential gift, scribbled next to some. 4x if deal closes, next to others. I know companies give clients gifts. It's standard. But there are rules, policies, limits. And somewhere in my memory, I recalled Mark ranting about the company tightening their ethics guidelines around expensive gifts, especially anything that could look like bribery. I also remembered him saying, with that smirk he gets, "Everyone ignores half of it. We'd lose clients if we followed it to the letter." Ah, so he'd been greasing some wheels with more than charm. I stood there in that wine room holding a printout of that spreadsheet and realized something very simple. My husband's empire wasn't built purely on hard work and merit. It was balanced on a pile of secrets and favors. And I, the woman he saw as an expendable chapter he could close, knew where some of those were buried. Planning the storm. Revenge stories always make it sound like there's this one big dramatic moment where the wronged person puts all the pieces together and suddenly has a master plan. Real life is messier. In reality, revenge comes to you in bits and pieces, in grocery store aisles, at red lights, while you're folding laundry.
It was in those quiet moments, when I'd normally be making mental lists of meals or yard work or appointments, that I started making different lists. What does Mark care about most? His money? His reputation at work? That damned wine collection? Being seen as a good guy? I couldn't go after his relationship with Ashley directly. If I tried to sabotage that, I'd come off as the bitter ex. Besides, women like her usually find out on their own what men like him are really like. I also wasn't about to do anything illegal or dangerous. That's not who I am, and frankly, at 60, jail sounds like a very unpleasant place to have hot flashes. But I could move chess pieces. First, the wine. The collection was in the house, which he'd so casually suggested we sell. Legally, it was a marital asset. He cared about it more than he cared about my retirement security, judging by his proposals. He assumed, of course, that he would keep it. It was his. I made an appointment with my lawyer. We'll call him John. Kind, middle-aged, very calm. The type who has seen this dance 1,000 times and knows exactly when to let a client vent and when to say, "All right, here's what we're actually going to do." He laid out the basics. Division of assets, spousal support, how the court would likely view a 32-year marriage, my contributions, his income. I kept my own temper mostly in check. Toward the end of the meeting, I asked very casually, "What about his wine collection?" John glanced at the notes. "Likely considered marital property," he said. "When was it purchased?" "Over the past 20 years," I said. He nodded. "Then it's part of the pot. It'll either need to be valued and factored into the division or assigned to one party with some offset elsewhere." "Could it be assigned to me?" I asked. He blinked. "Do you want it?" "I want him not to have it," I said plainly. A little smile tugged at his mouth. "That, my dear, is not a legal argument. But yes, we can request it, especially if he's getting more of the retirement accounts. Judges sometimes like to balance with tangible assets. We'll see." Next, I asked a few pointed questions about his work situation. Not specifics, just general things like, if there's something unethical happening at a company and a spouse knows. He held up a hand gently. "Careful," he said. "I don't want you telling me anything that could compromise you. But in general, if someone is aware of potential corporate misconduct, especially in a position like your husband's, the right channel is either internal, like a compliance department or board, or external regulators, depending on what it is." "And if the person with the information is angry?" I asked. "Being angry doesn't make you wrong. But again, careful. Don't fabricate anything. Don't exaggerate. If you ever report something, let the facts speak." I nodded like I was just vaguely curious. But inside, pieces were clicking. I went home, sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd sorted school forms and paid bills and clipped coupons, and made 2 columns on a legal pad. Column 1, things I can do legally. Column 2, things I want to do but probably shouldn't. Column 2 filled up fast. Key his car, smash his phone, send an email to everyone in his contacts with a photo of him and Ashley captioned "Midlife Crisis Exhibit A." Column 1 took more thought. Keep the house.
Insist the wine collection be awarded to me. Document everything. Gather proof of any unethical behavior at work. Send said proof to the right people anonymously. Protect myself financially first. I circled that last one, underlined it, because here's another thing revenge stories tend to skip. You can't pull off anything truly satisfying if you're in survival mode. So I got my ducks in a row. I opened my own bank account, if you can believe I didn't already have one separate from his. I started moving small, unremarkable amounts of my own income into it. I made copies of tax returns, pay stubs, insurance policies. All the while, I played the part of the reasonable estranged wife. When Mark came by, I was polite, calm, tired, maybe, but not hostile. He mistook this for acceptance. If you ever want to hide how dangerous you are becoming, let a man underestimate you. Works like a charm. Taking the wine. It took 3 months for the legal process to reach the point where property division was on the table.
3 months of documents and meetings, and Mark trying to negotiate via text. 3 months of me avoiding social events where I'd have to explain anything, dodging curious neighbors, and only crying in the shower. 3 months of him getting bolder with Ashley, no longer hiding the relationship at work, bringing her to the same restaurants we used to go to, even floating the idea of them hosting joint events with the kids someday. I ignored his fantasies and focused on facts. The day we had the property division meeting, he came in confident. He thought his lawyer, sleek, expensive, very sure of herself, would steamroll us. I let him have that illusion for exactly 20 minutes. His lawyer went through his list of proposals. House sold, proceeds split, retirement accounts divided in a way that on paper didn't look terrible, but in reality favored him heavily. Then she moved on. Mr. Reynolds will retain his personal property, including the wine collection, golf clubs, and— "Excuse me," I said, voice mild. "I'm actually requesting the wine collection." Silence. Mark turned slowly, staring at me. "What?" John slid a folder forward. "Mrs. Reynolds has been advised that the wine collection is marital property," he said smoothly. "Given the proposed division of retirement assets and her lower earning potential at this stage in life, she's requesting that the entire collection be awarded to her as part of her share of marital property." "That's ridiculous," Mark snapped. "She doesn't even drink half that stuff." "That's not the legal standard," John said. "Value is." Mark's lawyer tried to intervene. "This collection is tied to his professional role," she argued. "He uses it for client entertainment, relationship building, and he's welcome to start a new collection," John said. "With his very generous salary and bonus structure, my client would like this existing collection assigned to her." I met Mark's eyes, smiled just enough for him to see and no one else. His nostrils flared. "Absolutely not," he said. "It stays with me." "Then the division of other assets will need to be adjusted accordingly," John said. "We can have the collection appraised and subtract its value from your share of joint assets." His lawyer pulled him aside for a whispered conversation. I sat there, hands folded, looking out the window like the weather was fascinating. I could guess how that conversation went. "You want to keep your precious wine? Fine. It'll cost you. A lot." In the end, they decided the hit was too big. The appraisal John had quietly lined up ahead of time had been very thorough. Numbers don't care about your feelings. Reluctantly, they agreed. The written agreement came back. The house to be sold within a certain time frame. That battle I hadn't won yet. But the entire wine collection assigned to me as part of my portion of marital property. Afterward, in the parking lot, he caught up to me. "You don't even care about the wine. Why are you doing this?" I turned, looked him dead in the eye. I said, "Because I care about watching you lose things you love. Now you know how it feels." He just stared at me, stunned. He still didn't get it. He thought this was about petty spite. He had no idea it was the opening move. The papers were signed. On record, legally, the wine was now mine. That night, I went down into the cool, humming wine room and stood in the center, arms folded. "Hello, boys," I said to the rows of bottles. "Welcome to Team Linda." Then I turned off the light and shut the door. How to ruin a shrine without leaving fingerprints. Now, let me be crystal clear. I'm not recommending anyone destroy jointly owned assets. I'm not giving legal advice. I am telling you what I did, in a particular set of circumstances, fueled by 32 years of swallowed resentment. First thing I did, I removed every piece of documentation that lived in that room. Every inventory sheet, every little note. I put them in a binder and stuck it in a locked drawer in my bedroom. Then I called a guy. Not Mark's wine insurance appraiser, my own. He was recommended by a woman from my book club whose ex-husband collected something else expensive and ridiculous. Watches, in his case. He came over, looked everything over, and gave me a number. It was slightly lower than the appraisal used in the divorce paperwork, which made sense. Markets fluctuate. "Nice collection," he said. "You planning to sell?"
Eventually, I said, but not yet. In my head, cogs were turning. See, I didn't actually want to sell it immediately. That would have tipped my hand. If Mark heard even a whisper that I'd cashed out, he'd lose his mind. Maybe challenge something. Maybe use it as more fuel for his "she's unreasonable" story. No, what I wanted was worse. I wanted the knowledge that something he treasured existed in the world but was forever out of his reach. I wanted it wasted. And I wanted it done in a way that if he ever tried to point a finger, would make him look like a petty, bitter ex-husband, complaining that his former wife didn't properly care for a luxury asset. So I did the slowest, meanest thing I could think of. I sabotaged the conditions. Our wine room had one of those fancy climate control systems. Temperature, humidity, all that. It was on its own circuit. Mark had never trusted anyone but his guy to touch it. I, on the other hand, called a different HVAC company. My late husband was really into this wine room, I told the tech who came over, laying it on a little thick. I don't know much about it. I'm trying to cut down on some of the utility costs. Can we tweak anything? It feels too cold down here. He made some adjustments. Nothing dramatic on paper. A couple degrees here, slight change to humidity there, nothing that would raise alarm on a basic inspection. Then, a week later, I forgot to close the door all the way a few times when I went down there looking for decorations. Drafts, dust, a dehumidifier accidentally unplugged during a round of decluttering. Over months, imperceptibly at first, the conditions shifted. Wine is delicate. It doesn't like temperature swings. It doesn't like light. It doesn't like being taken from perfect storage and treated like a basement hobby. I didn't dump bottles down the drain. I didn't smash anything. I just did not treat them with the reverence he had. I stored Christmas boxes in there for a while. I had a handyman come in to fix a crack in a wall, during which time some dust and a bit of vibration occurred. Totally normal house stuff, not a crime. I invited neighbors over and served some of the lesser bottles at casual dinners. I opened things he'd been saving for people he wanted to impress and poured them into mismatched glasses next to lasagna. "Oh, this old thing," I'd say when someone complimented it. "It's from the basement." By the time the house sale finally went through, yes, I eventually agreed, but on my terms. The wine was no longer being kept in the optimal environment. And here's where it gets fun. I made sure the closing date for the house came after the legal transfer of the wine to me, but before I had to physically move it. On paper, I still owned it, but the house itself needed to be vacated. So I did something that would look insane to any collector. I told the movers to pack it like regular glassware. No special crates, no climate-controlled trucks, just bubble wrap in boxes, stacked in a storage unit. A storage unit that, over the next several months, experienced the lovely full range of Ohio seasons, sweltering humidity, freezing cold, everything in between. When I finally opened some of those boxes, long after everything was settled, most of those bottles were shot. Wine can cook. It can oxidize. It can die in 1,000 quiet little ways that make it worthless to the snobs who worship it. Did I know what I was doing? Absolutely. Could anyone prove malicious intent? Not really. At worst, I looked like a clueless older woman who didn't understand the intricacies of wine storage, which basically had been my role for years. I left a few bottles in decent shape. I wasn't a monster. I sold some. I drank a couple with Donna just to toast the petty goddess of justice. But the bulk of what he'd spent years curating, preening, bragging about, ruined. Once the dust had settled, I let the information slip.
We were months past the final decree. He and Ashley were playing house in some modern condo downtown.
I'd moved into a smaller place, closer to the library, with a garden I could actually manage, and a neighbor's text thread that mostly consisted of dog photos. He came by one afternoon to pick up some old files I'd found while unpacking. He looked around my new place, nose wrinkling at the lack of vaulted ceilings. "Cozy," he said. "Affordable," I corrected. His eyes drifted to a couple of bottles of wine on the counter. Ordinary stuff. Grocery store. "You still haven't done anything with the collection?" he asked, unable to help himself. "Oh, that," I said casually. "Most of it went bad." He blinked. "What?" "Yeah," I said, letting my tone go light. "I didn't really think about how to store it properly when I moved. The unit got pretty hot in the summer. A lot of the corks dried out or something. Tasted awful. Vinegar. I poured most of it out." His face went slack. "You what?" he whispered. "I poured it out," I repeated, as if I was saying I'd tossed some expired milk. "It was gross. I'm not going to drink something that tastes like feet just because it was expensive, Mark." That collection was worth..." He literally choked on the number for a second. "Why didn't you tell me? I would have..." "You would have what?" I asked sweetly. "Taken custody of it? Rushed in to rescue it? It was mine. Legally. Remember? You made sure of that to keep your precious balance sheets tidy." His jaw flexed. "You did this on purpose," he accused. I widened my eyes. "On purpose? Mark, you always said I never understood the wine thing. You were right. I guess I underestimated how fragile it all was. I thought it was supposed to be, what did you call it, a robust investment?" He stared at me, fury and disbelief fighting for space on his face. "You're unbelievable," he said finally. "No," I replied, calm as I'd ever been in my life. "I'm done being unbelievable. I'm just acting like the person you clearly thought I was, some clueless, harmless wife who doesn't know what she's doing." I stepped closer. "Maybe next time," I added, "don't build your identity around something you can't bear to lose and then hand it, on paper, to the woman you betrayed." He left without another word. Later, through the grapevine, I will never stop appreciating suburban gossip, I heard that he'd told a colleague the story, trying to paint me as irrational, vindictive. The colleague, apparently, had just nodded slowly and said, "Man, I'd be careful. Sounds like she's not messing around." Good, because I wasn't done yet. Exposing the good guy. If destroying his wine collection was personal satisfaction, what came next was public. I don't know if you've ever watched someone coast on a reputation you know they don't entirely deserve. It's like watching someone accept an award you helped earn while you stand in the back holding their coat. Mark had always talked about himself as if he were the moral compass of his department. He loved phrases like doing the right thing and holding the line and setting the tone. He also, as my notes and his paperwork suggested, played fast and loose with those lines when it suited him. I didn't have the whole story, but I had enough pieces. A client who'd gotten a suspiciously generous gift shortly before signing a massive contract, an internal complaint he'd brushed under the rug about one of his star guys being inappropriate with a junior analyst, expense reports that absolutely did not match the policies he'd once made me read when he was fuming about some other manager's misuse. I wrestled with what to do with all that. Part of me, the tired part, the part that just wanted to move on, said, let it go. You've got your house money, your freedom, your petty wine victory. Live your life. The other part, older, maybe, more like my mother, said, he doesn't get to walk away this clean. Ultimately, what decided it for me wasn't my hurt. It was a photo. Emily sent it to me one afternoon, a screenshot from LinkedIn. It was a post from the firm, a glossy photo of Mark at some podium, accepting an award. Congratulations to Mark Reynolds for exemplifying integrity, leadership, and ethical excellence in our organization for over 30 decades. The caption read, "I'm so mixed on this. I know you two have your issues, but he is still my dad. Just wanted to know this was happening in case you saw it and it hit hard. Love you." Integrity. Ethical excellence. I stared at that phrase until the words went blurry. Then I went to my bedroom, pulled out the binder I'd put together, and opened my laptop. I didn't do anything impulsively.
I'm not 20 anymore. I took a week. I researched the company's ethics hotline, the board members, the head of compliance, the external auditor they used. Then, one quiet evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the new one, smaller but mine, and began to write. I wrote an anonymous letter to the head of compliance. Not emotional, not ranting, just factual. I outlined several patterns of behavior I'd witnessed over the years through my husband's own bragging and paperwork. I mentioned specific deals, dates, and client names. I noted the discrepancy between internal policies and what he'd claimed to do. I made it clear I was not accusing them of anything, but suggesting they might want to look more closely at certain transactions. Then I wrote a similar one to one of the board members who'd built their entire public persona on transparency. I printed the letters at the library using cash for copies. Old habits die hard. I mailed them from a post office 2 towns over, and then I waited. I didn't know if anything would come of it. Maybe they'd throw it in a pile of cranks. Maybe they'd dismiss it as sour grapes from a bitter ex. But here's the thing about corporate environments like his. Appearances matter. Whispers matter. Anonymous tips matter, especially when they include enough concrete detail to make ignoring them risky. A month passed, then 2. Then one Friday afternoon, Emily called me. "Mom, have you talked to Dad?" she asked. My stomach dropped. "Not recently," I said, keeping my voice even. "Why?" She hesitated. He sounded weird on the phone. Something's going on at work. He wouldn't tell me much, but he said there's some kind of internal review. He's really stressed. Have you heard anything? I made a non-committal noise. "No, but those things happen. Could be nothing." "Oh, yeah, you're probably right." I hung up and went out into the yard, pretending to pull weeds while my heart did a little tap dance. Another 2 weeks went by. Then Donna, whose husband still occasionally golfed with some of Mark's old colleagues, called. "You sitting down?" she asked. "I'm weeding," I said. "Close enough." "Your ex," she said, drawing out the words, "is on administrative leave." I exhaled slowly. "Is he now?" "Something about a compliance investigation," she said. "That's all Harold knows, but it sounds serious. Harold says the rumor mill is going nuts." I felt not joy, not exactly, something more like grim satisfaction, like watching someone finally get pulled over after you've seen them run red lights for years. Over the next month, little bits and pieces filtered back to me. I didn't go digging. I didn't need to. I live in a world where people love to talk, especially about someone else's downfall. Internal audit had gone back over some deals. Questions had been raised about documentation, about gifts, about certain emails that, when read now, didn't look so great. A few former employees were contacted. Some had things to say about Mark's management style, about who got promoted and why, about how complaints had been handled, or not. I had no idea what was going on behind those closed doors exactly. I didn't need the details. I just knew that for the first time in his career, his shiny reputation had a dent. Then one overcast Wednesday, I got an email. Not from him, from Emily. "Mom, I know things are complicated, but Dad just called me. He's out. He says it's mutual, but it sounds like he was basically forced to resign. There's no severance package. He's furious.
I'm kind of shaken, to be honest. I don't know what to believe anymore when it comes to you two and his work. I just wanted you to know in case it comes up. Love you. M. Forced to resign. No severance package. Ethics award still fresh on his LinkedIn. I sat there a long time staring at that email. I thought about calling him, gloating, saying, integrity? Huh? But revenge isn't about giving the other person closure. It's about taking yours. So I didn't call. I went out to the small patio, sat in my cheap lawn chair, and listened to the birds. I thought about my mother, about that dream, about all the times I'd bitten my tongue over the years, telling myself not to rock the boat because stability mattered. Here's what I learned at 60. Sometimes the boat needs to rock. Sometimes it needs to capsize. And sometimes you need to let the man who drilled holes in the hull stand there sputtering while you quietly swim to shore. The aftermath. News of his departure spread quietly but quickly. Officially, it was framed as him choosing to pursue other opportunities, the usual corporate euphemism. But people aren't stupid. They can smell smoke.
I started hearing little things. A mutual acquaintance mentioning that some things came to light. Another saying he was always a little too slick, you know? Someone else noting that Ashley had been transferred to another department to avoid any appearance of favoritism. I didn't revel in Ashley's discomfort. Honestly, I felt a little sorry for her. She'd hitched her wagon to a man who'd built his life on a house of cards. It was bound to collapse eventually, with or without me. I'd just maybe given the breeze a nudge. I do know from one extremely awkward run-in at the grocery store that she wasn't thrilled. I was in produce, feeling up avocados like everyone else, when I heard a small, hesitant voice behind me. Linda? I turned. There she was. No perfect blowout this time. Hair in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, wearing leggings and an oversized sweatshirt like any other stressed-out 30-something. Ashley, I said. She swallowed. Hi. We stared at each other for a second over the tomatoes. How are you? She asked finally, because some habits are hard to kill. I'm all right, I said. How are you? She gave a humorless little laugh. Oh, you know, living the dream. Something about the way she said it made me soften, just a little. How's Mark? Her mouth tightened. He's angry, she said. At everyone. At the company. At you. Of course he is, I said. They're saying he violated policies, she blurted, about gifts, about documentation, about other stuff. He says it's exaggerated. He keeps saying everyone does it. But they picked him. She looked at me sharply. Did you say something? I considered lying. Or deflecting. Then I thought about all the women who stay silent because they're scared of being called vindictive, bitter, crazy. Yes, I said calmly. I did. She blinked. Why? The innocence of that question almost made me laugh again. Why? Because he built a career on cutting corners and expected everyone else to pay the cost. Because he cheated on his wife and thought he was entitled to walk away clean. Because he risked our financial stability and then tried to hand me a reasonable package like he was doing me a favor. Her eyes dropped. He said you were trying to destroy him. I'm not, I said. I didn't fabricate anything. I just pointed people toward things they should have been looking at all along. What they did with that information is on them. He destroyed himself the day he decided all those small dishonesties didn't matter. She bit her lip. I didn't know about all that, she said. I believe you, I said, surprising myself with the sincerity in my voice. You're young. Why would you? Men like him are very good at talking about their virtue while standing on a step stool made of other people's sacrifice.
She looked like she wanted to say something else, then thought better of it. "I'm sorry," she blurted. "For what?" I asked. "For him? That's his job." "For my part," she said, voice small. "I really did think, I don't know, that it was different, that it was about love." I sighed, feeling every one of my 60 years and then some. "Here's some free advice," I said. "If a man is willing to lie to his wife of 3 decades to be with you, he will absolutely lie to you when something shinier comes along. You're not special. You're just next." Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded quickly and turned away, muttering something about being late. I watched her go, feeling a complicated mix of satisfaction and pity. Not for him, never again for him. For all the women who'd been told they were crazy for seeing what they saw. Peace, finally. So where am I now? I live alone in a small, tidy house with a garden that makes me happy. I work my shifts at the library. I drink cheap wine without thinking twice about its legs or nose. I see Emily regularly. We had some hard conversations about her dad, about me, about the kind of marriage she thought we had versus the one we actually had. She loves us both, which is her burden and not mine. I told her it's okay to hold conflicting truths. Her father can be both a man who loves her and a man who did some profoundly selfish things. She asked me once over coffee if I regretted any of it. The marriage? I clarified. Or the revenge? Both, she said softly. I thought about it for a long time. I don't regret marrying him, I said. We had good years. We made you. There were times he was kind, times he showed up. I'm not going to rewrite the entire history as bad just because the ending was bad.
And the other part? She asked. The revenge? I smiled a little. I don't regret holding him accountable. I regret that it took me 32 years to stop prioritizing his comfort over my own integrity. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Did it make you feel better? She whispered. What you did? Not happy, I said honestly. This isn't a movie. His downfall didn't magically make me young again or erase the hurt, but it made me feel equal. Like the scales aren't as wildly tilted anymore. It gave me something back I hadn't realized I'd lost. My self-respect. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that dream. My mother, sitting at the old table, her hand on mine. Don't go to the restaurant he invited you to. I went anyway. I walked straight into the ambush. He thought he was going to lay out my new reality over a nice meal and a bottle of wine. What he didn't know was that he was also feeding the last naive version of me its final supper. The woman who walked out of that restaurant, leaving him and his mistress sitting there with their impotent plan, was not the same woman who walked in. She was done being handled. She was done being managed. She was done believing that loyalty meant swallowing every indignity quietly. I used to think my mother's warning was about avoiding pain. Now, I think it was about preparing me. She wasn't saying, don't ever go. She was saying, if you go, go in with your eyes open. Because in the end, my dream didn't save me from heartbreak. It did something better. It reminded me that I come from a line of women who know when they've had enough and who, when pushed too far, don't throw punches or break windows. We document, we wait, we aim for the foundation of what you love most. And then, very calmly, we pull the right brick.
Your watch to the end. Big click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.